Greetings of peace and love, everybody. My name is Ram Hotep, and I'm broadcasting on behalf of 13scienceastrology.com. In this particular segment, I'm going to talk about the Underworld, and I'm going to go into Shambala and Aghaarta and help people to understand exactly what and where Shambala and Aghaarta is. Now, before I get into that, what I want to do is I want to kind of give people a brief little background on the Underworld. Now, I know a lot of people, if you're watching this video or these types of videos for the first time, you may be thinking, what in the heck is the Underworld? Let me go ahead and explain that. There are caverns within the earth. The earth is hollow. A lot of people believe that the earth is solid and it's a solid rock. And they believe if you dig and go deep enough and dig within the earth, you're going to hit pretty much lava. So most people believe that, once you go below the ocean and get to the depths of the ocean, most people believe that from that point on, there's lava. And basically that the earth is solid. But this is a myth and a theory, and it's definitely not fact. There are many different scientists and researchers that have spent their lives researching the underworld and researching the fact that the earth is hollow. And this is called the hollow earth theory. It's a theory right now. And basically, the hollow earth theory just talks about how air can go through the earth because the earth is hollow. So people and beings can live within the earth because the only thing that a being needs to sustain his life is air to be able to breathe, and of course water. And there's plenty of water and air in the underworld. Actually, the underworld is, or aka the center of the earth, some people call it the center of the earth, or the underworld is essentially, it's probably more livable and more inhabitable, believe it or not, than the surface. When you read in the Bible and you read about different calamities and different catastrophes happening, and you hear about angels being sent out to the people, and these angels were sent out to lead the people from the surface of the earth to the underworld. Now, when you read about that, people fail to realize that that's how people survive most of the shifts and things that happen on this planet. Like, say, for instance, during the time when the dinosaurs walked the earth. During the time when the dinosaurs walked the earth, humans walked the earth essentially and lived amongst dinosaurs on the surface. A different type of human, of course, but called Homo saurus, but still a human. And these humans were able to survive, or a certain group of these humans were able to survive the meteorite that they talk about that hit the dinosaurs. There were a certain group of humans that were able to survive that. And the reason why is because these beings were led into the underworld by what some people would call angels. But actually, these angels are what you would really call extraterrestrial, or actually interterrestrial beings. A lot of times when people feel like they see a being with wings, and they always draw angels with wings. Why do they do that? They draw angels with wings because there are beings that live within the center of the earth that have wings. Out of all the different depictions that they could, I guess you could say, put on an angel, why do they put wings on an angel? You ever asked yourself that? Gargoyles also have wings. So I'm pointing all this out to just kind of show you that in the underworld, it's a totally different world and it's a different environment, and there are different types of beings that live there, because the underworld, actually, it exists in the fourth dimension. So when you talk about the whole underworld, you're talking about a different dimension, a different density. So it's a different wavelength. It's on a whole another level, the underworld is, in comparison to the surface of the earth. So when beings would survive calamities and catastrophes, they would walk those beings into the center of the earth. Different angels would walk those beings into the different levels of the underworld, or the center of the earth. Now, there's different levels to the underworld, and there's different access points. And if you research a guy by the name of Richard Hoagland, I believe his name is Richard Hoagland, and he's the guy that talks about, I did a video on him, believe it or not, about 6 months ago. He talks about the wars that were fought with the reptilians in the underworld. And he talks about how if you want to go deeper into the underworld, certain access is needed, depending on how low you want to go. And he talks about this vividly, and the funny thing about it is there's a story in Sumeria, in the Sumerian tablets. There's a story, and it talks about when Nergal made his descent to the underworld. There's a deity called Nergal. He made his descent to the underworld. And when he done that, he had to basically be able to get into different levels of the underworld by being able to either have a secret password or secret grip. It's just like getting into a secret society, like in the modern day and time. If you want to get into a secret society, you have to know a certain handshake, you have to know a certain knock. or something like that. Where it's just like that in the underworld, except it's a little more extensive. But if you want to get to different levels of the underworld, you have to know different secret passwords, put it that way. So these angels had to escort these humans into the earth, and that's how a lot of humans were saved. Different humans that went to the underworld. Now there's different classes and species of particular beings in the underworld. Like when you start talking about the underworld, you have you have the reptilian type of beings in the underworld. You have what's called the Deros, which are a group of beings that are what you would call morbidly obese. They're called the Deros. You have the Teros, which are beings that have cone heads. You see those movies like the cone heads? That's talking about the Teros. Those are a group of beings that live in the underworld. You have the Flugorods. The Flugorods are actually your modern day, when you talk about your dwarfs, and your leprechauns and all of that, this is really talking about a species of beings called your Flugorods. Very short species of beings, short in stature, about 3 feet tall, usually. Then you have the Denakil. Now the Denakil I did a video about them. This is a group of melanated beings that live within the underworld. Then you have the reptilians, the famous reptilians that everybody knows about. Of course, they live in the underworld. And the funny thing is that most people believe that the reptilians are the only group of beings that live in the underworld, like really period. Like when most people think about aliens, they either think about reptilians or greys. And you have way more than reptilians and greys that are living in the underworld. But they are there. The reptilians are there. Now there are species of greys that are living in the underworld too. They're there as well. Then you have the insectilians, and I'm going to be doing a video on the insectilians, but the insectilians live in the underworld as well. And they are definitely manipulating humans on the surface as well. Then you have the what's called the porcupine beings. They're called the porcupine beings. They have another name, but I won't really give that out here, but I call them the porcupine beings because they look like porcupines, but they're humanoid, meaning they're tall in stature, they have a lot of hair. They look like porcupines. They look like humanoid porcupines. You're not going to hear a lot of people talk about the porcupine beings. I have a little bit of research on them and things like that, and I might do a video on them. So these particular species, there's more than that. There's 24 different species that live in the center. I'm not going to name and go into all of them here. But these particular species all have their own leaders. They all have treaties with each other. Well, I'm not going to say they all have treaties with each other, but they have the ability to form treaties with each other. But you do have wars that are going on right now in the underworld. So some of these species do not get along. And the main thing they're fighting over is who is going to control the surface of the planet, believe it or not. That's what the war is about. It's not about anything else. So a lot of people that go outside and you might see like flashing lights outside and you're like, what is that? That's a war. That's a war that's going on from the underworld. And a lot of times we see the blasts and the lights, especially if you're those people that are out in the western part of the United States. I can't speak for other nations because I know I have people in Europe that listen to my videos and stuff like that. So I don't know if you guys see the flashing lights, but I know people that are like in Denver and Colorado and Las Vegas, you guys see it. And the reason why you guys see those flashing lights is because it's not a lot of artificial light out there, out in Denver or Colorado, as much as it is like in the East Coast. See, a lot of people don't realize that majority of the population of the planet lives in what's called cities. So if you travel outside of the cities, you get away from that light. You get away from that light residue that stays in the atmosphere, and you can see the sky a lot better. And you'll see UFOs, you'll see flashing lights, all type of stuff going on or whatever. So the stuff is out there. It's just that we don't know where to look. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on or whatever. A lot of wars that are taking place with and between beings in the center of the earth. Now, the beings that are fighting and going to war with each other, those are your primitive beings that live in the center of the earth. The more advanced beings are not fighting each other. They're way past that. They're way more past that. You have a group of Pleiadians that live in the center of the earth, and these Pleiadians look humanoid. They look humanoid in nature, and they live in the center of the earth. And if you've seen one, you would not be able to tell the difference between these Pleiadians and a regular human on the surface. And they're all different nationalities. Some of them are black, some of them are European. Most of them are either so-called black or European as far as the way they look. But you got to remember that just because they look like that does not mean that that's what's on the inside, because some Pleiadians can take on a body at a particular time, and then once they leave this frequency, they go into another state, which is basically past a body. Because we start talking about fifth dimensional states, as I always teach, you're talking about a state that really is past the need of a human body. So you got Pleiadians down there. You have 3 different levels to the earth, you know what I'm saying, to the physical earth. Then you got different levels on the dimensional or the density earth. So the earth goes all the way up to 5 density, as I talk about. But you have different levels. You have 3 levels to the earth. You have the inner core, the surface, and the outer core. And beings can live in all of these different levels of the earth. Beings can live, once you get 150 miles past the surface of the earth, you're talking basically places that beings can inhabit. Surface of the earth is approximately only 150 miles. So once you penetrate, you go deep within the ocean, you penetrate the surface of the earth 150 miles, that's when you enter into the underworld. Now, there are tunnels. The underworld is deep. It's a network of beings. You got to remember that. So there are tunnels that lead to the underworld. There's ways to get from, say, for instance, there's a way to get from Giza and the Great Pyramid all the way to South America through the underworld and through the tunnels, a network that's set up through the underworld or whatever. So it's a network. It's an older network than the surface, believe it or not. The network that's set up in the underworld is way older and way deeper than the surface of the planet Earth. Now, let me get into Shambala. Now, Shambala and Aghaarta. Shambala is pretty much like a United Nations of the underworld. Shambala is kind of like a nation. It's different beings that live in this nation. Shambala, just like if you go on the United Nations website, you're going to see Africans, you're going to see Europeans, you're going to see Chinese people, all part of the United Nations, right? Well, it's just like that in Shambala. In Shambala, you have a representative for all the different tribes that live within the center of the earth in the underworld. You have a representative of all of these different tribes that sits on the council in Shambala, because that's the whole council of the underworld. And Aghaarta is a city within that nation that a lot of beings live at. Now, Shambala means the sense of the Most High, and Aghaarta means the illuminated place. So Aghaarta is basically the place, one of the most enlightening places here on this side of the galaxy, or on this side of the universe. So a lot of beings, I talked about this before, but a lot of beings, you'll see their crabs coming in, and most of them come in through the West Coast if they come in through America, but you'll see the crabs going in because it's an entrance to get into the underworld through Mount Shasta, which is in California. Mount Shasta, they have an entrance to get into the underworld, which is where the root chakra is located at. And that's the root chakra of the planet, because the planet has different chakras, as I always talk about. And the root chakra of the planet is in Mount Shasta. So a lot of times beings can enter into the underworld from there. It's a lot of different ways to get into the underworld. You can get into the underworld from the Bermuda Triangle. They have some beings, their crabs can fly underwater. They can crash into the water and keep flying. So a lot of times when people say that somebody went into the Bermuda Triangle, like a ship or airplane, they travel within that region and they got lost, that's because that's an entrance and the gateway into the 4th dimension in the underworld. And the reason why the ships get lost is because their radars don't work when they get into that particular range a lot of times, and they aren't able to navigate. In order for an airplane to be able to know where it's going, they need to be able to have someone at the control station to guide them and navigate them through the radar. And a lot of times those radars go haywire when they get by the Bermuda Triangle, so a lot of planes, they don't even fly over that region. A lot of ships don't navigate through that region or those waters, and that's because that's a portal. That's a portal that leads you to the underworld. The Great Pyramid is another portal that leads to the underworld, the Giza complex. The chamber that I talked about in another video, I talked about how there's a well beneath the king's chamber, and that well has a shaft that leads into the underworld. So you can take that shaft, and that's another way to get into the underworld. There are entrances into the underworld in Kentucky, in America. I'm not going to go too much into all of this type of information because I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on it, but there's an entrance to get into the underworld or the center of the earth through Kentucky. And that's where a lot of your flugel rods and things like that live at. So there's a lot of entrances into the underworld, a lot of different entrances. But it's really like the world of the occult. When you start talking about the underworld, that is the occult. Because most people that are into the occult and most beings that are conjured in the occult all exist in the underworld. They all exist in the underworld. Even beings on Sirius, like when people do rituals to different star constellations, every star group has a group within the underworld or on our planet to represent them. So you may have different star groups throughout the universe, but they all have representatives here on this planet, and their representatives don't live on the surface, they live within the underworld, and that's what makes it interesting. Now the technology in the underworld, I'm not going to go too much into it, but the technology in the underworld is off the chain. The technology in the underworld is really deeper than the technology that we have here on this particular surface, on this particular density, or in this 3rd density. The technology that we have, believe it or not, came from the underworld. I'm not going to go too much into it, like I said, but they have a lot of technology there. So they do cloning there. They have a lot of projects that they do. So like a lot of times when they want to send beings out to the surface, because like what they do in the underworld, like this is how the different groups do it, like the different star groups do it. They'll clone and make a hybrid that looks human, but this hybrid represents these different ETs or these different groups in the underworld, and they'll send that hybrid to the surface and have them represent you. So a lot of your presidents, a lot of your world leaders, a lot of your entertainers, a lot of people that you think are human, a lot of your newscasters could be hybrids. Some of them even robots, believe it or not, because in the underworld they have a way of creating robots that look human. A lot of your Deros, the beings that were morbidly obese that I spoke of, they are actually robots, believe it or not. The term Deros means terrible robot or horrible robot, because a lot of them are robots or mechanical, and they just look human. So when you watch movies like The Terminator, they didn't make those things up. They didn't make that up, because The Terminator is basically talking about beings that were constructed from technology that look human. You would never know, and they hunt other beings or whatever. So the underworld is really deep. It's a lot of information that could be talked about the underworld. I just wanted to give a brief measure on the underworld. Another thing I will point out before I shut the video down is about Shambala. I want to talk about Shambala. Now Shambala, Aghaarta, is the capital of the earth. It's definitely the capital. It's definitely the capital of the underworld. But there are other cities. So you have to understand that there are other cities and kingdoms within the underworld. So though Shambala is the capital, because this is something you must understand, when I start making other videos, it'll make more sense. But though Aghaarta is the capital of Shambala, and though Shambala is the capital of the underworld, there are other cities within the underworld. So that's very key, in you understanding that. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. I thank you guys for listening and watching, and that's my brief spill on the underworld. I'm going to do more videos on this. I'm going to specifically talk about the technology, though, and that's what I really want to introduce in this video, is to talk about the technology in the underworld. I'm going to specifically, on part 2, I'm going to specifically talk about the technology that they have in the underworld and how it's influenced our culture. Because believe it or not, our culture has been heavily influenced by the underworld, and we don't even realize it because we don't know the technology that they have down there. HAARP itself, I'll say this one point and I'll shut this video down. HAARP itself, the program called HAARP, that supposedly is supposed to be helping the ozone layer, because like a lot of people don't know, the reason why they say that they put together HAARP is because they say that the ozone layer is depleting, and they put together this program of HAARP so that they can pretty much remedy that problem. But that's not what HAARP is dealing with. HAARP is really a network that's in contact with the underworld, and they have a pact with the underworld. The reason why HAARP experiments in North America so much, and they do most of their experimentations in North America, is because that's the main entrance that most beings take to get to the underworld. It's through the North Pole, not North America, excuse me. The reason why HAARP experiments so much in the North Pole, and they do a lot of experiments in the North Pole, is because different beings come from different constellations, wherever they're coming from, and they enter the underworld through the North Pole. And that's very important to understand here, because that's why HAARP has that base set up, so that, because they have a pact with these different beings so that they can get in and out without being bothered by different nations or whatever. And then in return, they give them technology, and they introduce to them technology. So when you start talking about the HAARP weather machine and all of that, that's technology that beings gave the surface dwellers, or the powers that be, or the elite. The Illuminati is up under the control of those particular beings that control the underworld. See, so it gets deep. It gets deep here, and technology is very key in the underworld. So that's why I'm going to shut this video down, ending with HAARP, because yeah, they make weather and all of that, but they're using technology to do that. So technology is very key if you want to understand the underworld. They do have, the ETs have access to our internet. Our internet was given to us by extraterrestrials, and I've pointed this out in other videos. So they can do a lot. Just think about that alone. The fact that an extraterrestrial can be on the internet right now. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Like, I mean, you could just be sitting there typing and talking with someone that's extraterrestrial on the internet. You don't know how they look. All you have to do is be connected to the network. So, and actually, they have a more advanced internet. They gave us a watered down version. I know I'm going into too much here. I'm spoiling the technology video, so let me stop. I thank you guys for listening and watching. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. So until we meet again, I'm going to leave y'all in peace, love, and light. Namaste.